Alright, the next thing we're going to do is set up a series of traps in the floor for our next section. These will be small pillars that will pop up at random and hurt the player. Now we're going to build these out of a particular static mesh which is already included with UDK, so let's open up the content browser, and I want you to search for pillars and Deco Pillar 4, all one word, so DECOPILLAR 4, and that'll take us right to the pillar in question. Now make sure you've clicked all assets if you haven't. And we'll close out the content browser. And I'm just going to right click here on the floor and add this actor as an interp actor. It's important that you do that. Now a couple of things. One, I'm going to take my drag grid and set this down to 8. I'm going to double click on this pillar and come to collision. Make sure this is set to block all. And we'll go ahead and close that. Now we have some very specific scaling factors we're going to apply here. So skip the first field, which scales up uniformly. Take the second one and set it to 2 for X, 2 for Y as well. And then for Z, we're actually going to set this to -5. And what that's going to do is turn the pillar upside down and stretch it out so it sticks out through the floor, as you can see here. Now we want to slide this down through the floor so only the very top of it sticks out. So it's one of the reasons why the drag grid of 8 is going to be pretty useful. Now I'm going to switch over here to the top view, and what we're going to do is set up a checker pattern that just sort of fills in this area. So it looks like we can probably slide this over about like so. Actually, we can use these tiles on the floor as kind of a reference. So I'm going to hold down Alt and drag out a copy of this over here to this next floor tile. Let go of Alt, hold it down again, and I'm going to make sure that I am using the world reference coordinate system, and in the top view I can just drag out another copy. So we're starting to get this checker pattern that you can see here. Now, I'm going to grab all 3 of these at once just to kind of speed things up. Hold down Alt and slide these up. Slide them up. And then I'll just grab these 2 by themselves and duplicate them up as well. So now we have a nice field of these pillars. Now once we have this done, it's time for us to go into Kismet. But first, let's grab all of these pillars. Basically, we're going to store all of these pillars in a special kind of variable called an object list. So with all of them selected, let's go into Kismet. I'm going to come all the way over to our global variables section, and we'll expand this out a little bit further. Let's right click and come down to New Variable and choose Object, Object List, and we'll give this a variable name of pillars, plural. Multiple pillars. Right click on this and choose Assign Interp Actor 8 to Object Variables. And it looks like, oh, I'm sorry, we want to insert selected actors into Object List. There we go. So now you'll see we have everybody in there. Very long list. Fortunately, when we deselect, that shrinks back down. So now all of our pillars are indeed stored in the list, which is exactly what we want. Now, with that done, our next step is going to be to create a new event to help us handle all this. So I'm going to come over here. We have our block movement section. Let's just grab all of this, and let's put this inside one great big comment called moving block. And I'll just expand this out a little bit. There we go. So we'll come underneath here, and let's just kind of set up a new section where we're going to work on the pillars. We'll right-click, go to New Event, and this will be a level-loaded event. Now next to this, we're going to do an access object list. Basically, this action we're going to add in allows us to dig through that list we just put together and do something with the objects found within it. So let's right-click, go to New Action, Object List, and you'll see Access Object List. Now, upon level loaded, so loaded and visible, we're going to access, actually let's use beginning of level. So at the beginning of level, we're going to grab some random entry from our object list. Now, instead of making a duplicate of our variable, we're going to do just like we've been doing with our global variables and use a named variable to access it. So let's go to Variable, Named Variable, and set the find variable name to pillars. So that reaches over to our object list, and all we have to do is plug that into the object list input. So now we're going to be accessing one of our random pillars. What we want to do now is store whatever pillar we just happened to access. So I'm going to start off by going back over to our global variables. We're going to create a new object variable and give this a variable name of active pillar. Now we're going to give a new named variable to our sequence over here that refers to that active pillar. So let's right click, new variable, named variable, and we'll call this active pillar. Plug this into the output object. Now the cool thing in this case about using the named variables is that we're going to be reaching into that list and taking out some random pillar, and we'll be able to repeat this over and over again to make different pillars snap up into the air and hurt the player each time. Now, with this setup, we need to set up the pain-causing portion of our network. So let's close out of Kismet for just a moment, and I'm going to select one of our pillars, right-click on my cube builder, and we're going to set the values to 128 by 128 by 128. Now, as soon as you do this, grab the builder brush and pull it down through the floor. Just get it down here to someplace out of the way. And we're going to add a dynamic physics volume. Slide the builder brush out of the way, and here's our dynamic physics volume. We need to set some properties here, so let me close the cube builder window, open up our properties window, and here inside of physics volume, we want to make sure that we set this to pain causing, so switch that on, and damage per second we're just going to set to 5. I suppose you could set it higher, but at some point it's just going to hurt so much that this spot could be impossible to get through. Now, back over into Kismet. We can close the properties window, jump back into Kismet. Next we're going to set up an attach to actor action. And what this is going to do is take our dynamic our dynamic physics volume, and it's going to attach it to one of these random pillars. So we'll right click, new action, actor, and grab attach to actor. Take the out and plug that in. Now, with that in place, we need to determine who's going to get attached. So a couple of things first. Here inside the attach to actor, make sure that we scroll down to the bottom of the properties and use relative offset. And we need to set the relative offset property to positive 64. And what that's going to do is attach this volume to the top of that pillar to make sure it actually does come in contact with the player. Now we're going to take our active pillar variable and attach that to the target. So that is the pillar that we're going to be attaching this volume to. Now what we need is an object variable that references that volume. So we can right click and new object var using dynamic physics volume 0. And there we go. So let's take a quick look at the flow. So as soon as the level begins, we're grabbing one of our random pillars out of the list, and all we're doing is attaching our dynamic physics volume to that pillar right at the very top. That's all we've done so far. Now at this point, we just need to take that pillar and make it jump up into the air real quick. We're going to do that with a matinee. So let's close out of Kismet for just a moment and grab any one of these pillars. It really doesn't matter which one. We just need to have somebody selected so that we can work with matinee. So right here next to our attach to actor, I'll right click, create a new matinee. Now, the only thing I'm going to set inside matinee, actually there's a couple of things. We're going to switch on rewind on play, and we're going to take the play rate and we're really going to crank it up. So we'll lift that up to 3 times. That way we can set up an animation that's relatively slow, and then we can control the speed of it as we go forward. So if we need these to pop up faster, we can just increase the play rate. So let's take the output of our attach to actor, connect to play, open up our matinee, and I'll go ahead and hide out Kismet back here in the background. Let's create a new empty group, which I will call Killer Pillar. Dun, dun, dun. And we'll add a movement track into this. Now we have our first key set up by default, of course. Let's take our overall animation time and let's pull that back to just 1 second. Now, at the very end of that 1 second, I'm going to press enter, and that's just going to drop a keyframe down that will automatically bring our pillar back to its start position. Now let's come over to about 0.15, excuse me. So at about 0.15, we're going to move this pillar up into the air to slam into the player. So right about here, let's press enter, and it snapped that all the way back. So let me actually delete that out. Cannot delete the first key. Okay, so it didn't actually put anybody in there. Let's make sure that we don't... Oh, yeah, I thought so. We actually had a hidden key in there. So let's just right-click on that, and we'll set the time to 0.15. And that's just because currently I have 0.5 snapping up there. Now we need to move our pillar up into the air. I'm just going to grab our Z translate on the translation widget, and we'll slide this guy up 208 units, like so. So there's our pillar popping up into the air to bump into our player and hurt them. Now you can play this back if you want to. Just remember that you are playing back at 3 times your speed, so boom. Actually, we're not playing back at 3 times our speed yet. We will be once we actually jump into the level, so if it looks a little slow, don't worry about that. Okay, so with that, we can close out of Matinee. Let's go back into Kismet. We're going to take out interp_actor9, just go ahead and delete that, and instead we're going to take our active pillar named variable, make a copy of that with Control-C, Control-V, and plug that into the Matinee. Now at this point, we should be just about set to go. If we tested it right now, however, we would just have a single pillar that jumped up into the air once. What we want to do is take the completed of our Matinee and swing this all the way back around to our random. Now what that's going to do is, if we follow the flow once again, at the beginning of the level, we're going to grab a random pillar out of the list. We're going to attach our dynamic pain-causing volume to the end of it, then make it jump up into the air and potentially hit the player. Then, as soon as that's done, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning, grab another random pillar, and repeat the process over and over in a loop. Now this time, I'm going to go ahead and comment this now. So let's call this Killer Pillars. And we'll close this out. I'm dying to test this. So jump into the level, and we need to get our block out of the way. And you can already see the pillars jumping up and down if you were looking. So now our block's out of the way, and we'll run around. There's that nice quaternion spin. And come on. I want to win the lotto. Hit me. There we go. That hurt. And that hurt too. So our trap pillars are actually working. And that was very easy to set up. So that is going to wrap things up for this video. Be sure to save your progress, and then we'll continue.